And hello, everybody. Welcome to week two. This is exciting. You're on your way this time. So, first, we started week one with what makes a great project manager. A couple of things. One, some skills like leadership skills, interpersonal skills, management skills, and technical skills in your industry. Great. And then we applied those to what makes a great project manager and issues log, right? Tracking things and chasing them down so that they are complete. Super work. Now we enter week two. Week two is exciting because we start to talk about the work breakdown structure. This is a phenomenal tool that you need to be introduced to, hence the point to the topic this week. Super exciting. To be honest, most projects fail for a lot of reasons. But the number one reason projects fail is that scope or the requirements, scope is a fancy project management word for the requirements. The requirements were either identified and not completed, or they were not identified in advance. Then there's some other things, scope creep, scope change, scope gap, but that's for another topic. Just know that scope, understanding what it is, being in agreement with your leadership on the scope that drives success is critical to your well-being, to your achievement as a project manager. And so just know the first thing we're going to do is talk about, yes, this topic this week is about the scope state, about the work breakdown structure. But first we need to understand the scope statement. Also understand that scope is essentially equal to requirements, right? When I say scope, I mean, what are the requirements of whatever you're working on? So the first thing we want to understand is that scope is about the requirements. And so let me adjust this a little bit. There you go. And so we are about, as we talked last week, turning chaos into order as project managers. So since most projects fail because of scope or requirements issues, let's define it accurately, right? And so scope refers to that detailed set of deliverables, right? Or features of the project that you must deliver on time. And so these really become the project requirements. The PMBOK guide would say it this way: the scope is the work that needs to be accomplished to deliver a product, service, or result with specified features or functions. Notice if I'm making a scope statement, which is the goal of this slide, I'm going to define the project requirements right here. That's critical. I'm also going to define success criteria. I will know when I've achieved success on my project because me and the leadership, the other stakeholders, are agreed, right? And part of any project has assumptions and constraints. That's also something I want to understand before I begin my work. I also want to know what's not in the project. So say you're a tower climber and your job today is dropping coils, wire, fibers from the tower, right? You're dismantling, say, 4G because we've moved to 5G. Well, in that case, right, what's not in the project might be taking the fiber that you've dropped and disposing of it, right? If it's not, sometimes some companies let you take it and trade it in yourself. They don't care as long as it's dropped and off the tower, right? What's not in the project is just as important as what is in the project in terms of requirements. And that's what the scope statement is all about. Now, when I say a scope statement, I do mean a statement. It is a narrative, is the word we like to use right here, a narrative, right? It's a narrative description. And so these are all narratives, and these are parts of my scope statement in blue that we just talked about, including assumptions, constraints, success, or here we call it acceptance criteria. What are the requirements or actual deliverables? Can I describe my project? And so this was a game I made up for a different class. And basically you would drop and connect the description to the right box, the deliverables to the right box. In the end, it doesn't matter. All I'm trying to emphasize is that your scope statement, your set of requirements that define the assumptions, the project assumptions, project constraints, project requirements, project success, that narrative statement, which is a combination of all these, so it's lengthy, that narrative statement would look something like this, right? Because the focus today is really about the work breakdown structure, which is pictured here, the work breakdown structure. And so notice at the top, this is a work breakdown structure in green. Notice at the top, you can either put the project name, or what I prefer to do is to put the scope statement right here, right at the top. I put the scope statement. These are the requirements. This is how we define success, how we know we're done. These are the assumptions and constraints we're working on. Then I'll break it down into a layer 2 and maybe a layer 3 or layer 4, right? You don't need to know everything on the slide, but what you need to understand is the scope statement is that narrative of what you must accomplish for success. And then you'll break it down into work packages, right? So if I'm building a bicycle, if that's my scope statement, I want to build a bicycle that is Walmart quality, that I could have at a discount price, but my child could enjoy it for a season or two, right? It's not going to be a specialized mountain bike. It's not going to be a specialized racing bike. Those are in specialized biking stores. But notice my scope statement says I'm building a Walmart quality bike. It'll last a couple of years, right? A couple of seasons. Child will grow out of it. It'll have fat tires. It looks like a mountain bike, but really, that's not really what we're building it for. And so from that, I want to build my frame, my handle, my tires, and the project manager, of course, is part of this breakdown, the work you're doing. And then in my frame, I want to include the handlebars as part of that frame. It's an add-on piece, and some other accoutrements, lights and things like that. Notice my tires, I want to break that down into front tire and rear tire, because the front tire of a bicycle is very simple. It's similar to the back tire, but the back tire is usually much more complex with all the gears that go on, some additional lights, maybe some braking mechanisms, etc., tied to it, right? And then I assign people to each of these tasks. I know who's in charge of the tires, and I know who's in charge of the front tire and the rear tire, right? While I'm working this scope statement. Notice the scope statement right here is what the team is building. Those are those requirements we just talked about on the previous slide. And then I have my work breakdown structure, which is defining by breaking down that scope statement into little packages, deliverables with people in charge of them. And the three of these combined, the scope statement we just talked about, the work breakdown structure, which you see pictured here, and the dictionary that goes with it, all the extra details, all three of those create something called a scope baseline. And the scope baseline is something you are measured against. Okay. This is in the tab, the Project Management Tools tab that I've provided. Okay. And this is a work breakdown structure. Notice it's hierarchical. So every WBS is considered hierarchical. It's a hierarchy. Starts with scope statement and we break it down. It's called decomposition. We're actually decomposing the scope statement into little workable pieces and assigning people to them. Notice that in the Excel spreadsheet I provide, this is also a hierarchy where I have ID number 1, 2, 3. I'm going to list the actual task. This could be ID 1, ID 1A, ID 1B, ID 2, ID 2A, 2B, ID 3, ID 3A, and 3B, right? It's still hierarchical. This is still hierarchical, even though it's going to look like a list. It's hierarchical based on how I number them. So notice I'll put the task, the little box you saw in green. These are tasks, right? I'm going to put the task, and then I'm going to put what's my current status, right? I'm going to, how many hours do I think this task will take? What's the budget for this task, right? What's my start date? And based on the effort, how long to complete it, right? And what's my actual completion? Because I'm trying to learn lessons. What did I miss here if I didn't end it when I thought I would end it, right? And how many resources are required to do that task? So this is a sample work breakdown structure. When I say it's hierarchical, this would be that same list, but notice the hierarchy. I have section 1.0, which is the main category, and I can have subcategories and subcategories, right? Based on the numbering. So even though it's in a column like your Excel spreadsheet, based on how I number them, I end up with a hierarchy. Just another way of looking at it. Then I can have my main topic number 2, and its subcategories and subcategories. Some would have, perhaps. Main category 3 and 4. It's hierarchical. This is another picture of a hierarchical work breakdown structure. Notice here, I would put my scope statement right at the top. I would break it down into deliverables, and some of those deliverables break down into other discrete parts. I would assign owners to every one of these and record it in my work breakdown structure, probably using this kind of numbering system. But this is also work breakdown structure. It looks very much like this green one here, but you can see that it's hierarchical. It's hierarchical. It's hierarchical. It's hierarchical. That's probably a test question, in fact. So, and what I've done then, because I've built my scope statement, which is my narrative statement of all my requirements and success, what's success criteria, and then from that, I broke that down into a hierarchical work breakdown structure. I now have my scope baseline, right? And my project, my scope baseline right here, my project will eventually have 3 major baselines. Scope, then I'll do one with my schedule later, and then one with my cost. And my job as project manager, while I'm ensuring quality in all of them, is to make trade-offs. Notice it's an equilateral triangle. All sides are the same. So every time there's a change to my scope, I want to consider, are there then changes to my schedule and budget? Because this must remain an equilateral triangle, all sides equal. If I add scope to my project, I'm going to add budget and add time. If I cut my scope, I'm probably going to reduce the schedule and reduce the cost that goes with it. And this is what I mean about we tailor this iron triangle all the time so that it always stays all sides equal. And I'm talking to the stakeholders while I do that. So the cost baseline would be next. I don't need to go into that right now, but just to show you, we're going to talk about that, and then we'll talk about schedule baseline. Also, there's a term called performance measurement baseline. This is its own term, okay? And what it means is instead of just talking the scope baseline by itself, in a performance measurement baseline, it says I'm actually talking all 3 baselines at the same time. So I could talk scope baseline all by itself. I could talk cost baseline all by itself. I could talk schedule baseline all by itself. But if I talk about all 3 in relation to each other, that's called the performance measurement baseline. It's measuring your performance. And so the project is broken out, this work in this work breakdown structure, into a life cycle based on phases. Phases are these logically related deliverables that we have, and each phase closes with what we call a phase gate or a kill point or a go, no-go decision. So I could have multiple phases in a project, or I could have just one phase. Hey, drop the fiber on the tower. That's it. The gate check is the fiber dropped? Okay, that's it. I will see you guys online. That was fun.